Shining Force Gaiden Final Conflict is a bit of a weird one. It was released on the Sega Game Gear in 1995, but never saw an official release outside of Japan. Thankfully, a group of dedicated fans over at Shining Force Central took up the task of translating the game into English. Unlike the fan translation of Shining Force 3 Scenarios 2 and 3, however, at the time of making this video, I could not find any reproduction cartridges online in order to play it. Shining Force Gaiden Final Conflict, or just Final Conflict as I'll be referring to it for the rest of the video, was released after Shining Force 2 and attempts to bridge the story between it and the first Shining Force game. Despite having Gaiden in the title, it has virtually nothing to do with the two Shining Force Gaiden games that came out before it. I think it has the subtitle of Gaiden because Gaiden in Japanese literally means a sub-story or spin-off, which is something all three of those games have in common. That and they are all Game Gear titles. While Final Conflict attempts to bridge the stories between Shining Force 1 and 2, without getting into spoiler territory, I don't think it does a really good job. We follow Max and Adam, who have met up with some others and are chasing down Michaela to stop her from resurrecting Darksoul. Okay, let's just stop right there for a minute. This is where I think things already start to get kinda weird. Darksoul was the antagonist of the first Shining Force game, but his only goal was to resurrect Dark Dragon, and in Shining Force 2, the plot revolves around Xeon being resurrected. Plus, in Shining Force Gaiden and Gaiden 2, the plot revolves around other demons being resurrected. That's a lot of resurrection stories. It's starting to get a little old at this point, but what I don't understand is why Michaela wants to resurrect Darksoul. It seems like a step backwards from resurrecting Dark Dragon, and I guess that's where my issues with this game start to come in. The point of the story is to try and connect Shining Force 1 and 2, but it mostly just focuses on original Shining Force characters. The only connection that Final Conflict has with Shining Force 2 is that it name-drops Xeon a bit, and some other characters and locations that I won't spoil here make cameos. But other than that, it really doesn't have much to do with Shining Force 2, and I'm not really sure how the end of Final Conflict's story is supposed to line up with the beginning of Shining Force 2. Anyway, this time our party leader is Renfob, or as he's canonically known, Ian. He's kinda just a guy. He sort of shows up out of nowhere. They do this a lot in Shining Force games, and that's another thing that I'm kind of sick of. The main character always just shows up out of nowhere, and then miraculously has something to do with the plot later. It's kinda lazy writing, and it's starting to get old. The whole point of the journey is that we're trying to find Max after he goes after Michaela, and that's pretty much it. There's really not much else to say about the story. There aren't too many twists or turns, and the only ones that are there don't really feel like they serve much of a purpose or were already used before in previous Shining Force entries. Unfortunately, I don't think the gameplay is as good as other Shining Force games either. Similar to the other Gaiden games or Shining Force CD, there are no towns in which you can explore, so the entire game follows the pattern of fight a battle, watch a cutscene, rinse and repeat for 20 or so battles. Unfortunately, I didn't find the battles to be nearly as enjoyable as they were in the Gaiden games. Because of the small screen, I found that the menus would get in the way of the battlefield and I'd have to move my character around or send them back to their original position in order to see who or what they would be standing next to. To be fair, this could be an issue with the other Gaiden games on Game Gear, but I don't know because I played the Sega CD version, and in that one there's a lot of space to see everything. But even just the layouts of each battle weren't nearly as exciting as the other Gaiden games were. They had interesting layouts where I was constantly splitting up my troops, or I had to fight through battles with a mage as the party leader. Final Conflict doesn't have anything interesting going for it. Almost every single battle I just moved my entire army across the battlefield. There aren't many gimmicks, there wasn't any wild change in terrain or unique enemies to defeat, and the character roster was kind of lacking. The characters felt safe. A thief/ninja, centaurs, the classic hero swordsman, archers. We do at least get a dragon knight, but come on, we're the old men flying in suits and armadillos and magical jellyfish monsters, the anthropomorphic rats. The characters aren't offensive, it's just that the original Shining Force set the bar so high in terms of character diversity that it's hard not to be disappointed with subsequent games that don't live up to or even come close to that standard. But maybe I'm being too hard on Final Conflict. One good thing that it does have going for it is that the music is top-notch. It takes a lot of its soundtrack from Shining Force 2, but since it's on the Game Gear, downgrades them to the respective hardware. I actually really enjoyed hearing it. The original compositions are also really good, especially the song that plays during the intro cutscene. The sound design overall is actually really good. I like the subtle change that flying characters have a different sound as they move across the battlefield than ground characters do. And one thing I think Final Conflict does better than most other Shining Force games is that the characters that join your party tend to speak more and join in on the story. It's not a lot more, but it was enough to make me notice, and I really appreciate that. Unfortunately, I don't have much else good to say about Final Conflict. While it may not be my favorite Shining Force game, at the end of the day, it's not a bad one, and if you really dig your turn-based tactical goodness, then I'm sure you'll have a good time with this one. It's on the shorter side at only around 10 to 15 hours, but honestly, having played it now, I kind of understand why they didn't bring it over to the West. It's a story that didn't need to be told. I'm glad it exists, but it doesn't do anything to make the stories of Shining Force 1 or 2 make any more sense. In fact, it kind of just left me more confused than anything. If you're a die-hard Shining Force fan, then I recommend it. But only after playing Shining Force 1 and 2, because otherwise this one doesn't really make that much sense. It does not bridge the gap the way that I thought it would, and acts more like fan service, more than a legit bridge between two almost unrelated stories. And before I end the video, I just want to say thank you to the people who actually took the time, like 15 years ago or whatever it was, to actually go and translate this game. The translation is actually very good, and I was very impressed with how well it came out, especially considering how it was just fans that translated it. And for my next installment, I'll be taking a look at Shining Force 2, which was actually the first Shining Force game that I ever played, so keep an eye out for that. Anyways, I'm Bofner, and I'll see you all next time!